Welcome to the Streaming Our Stories or SOS podcast, where we use this performer to promote Sela Arts Fest vendors and organizers like Xitlalic. Tell us the name of your business and what part of Sela you rep.
Hi everyone, my name is Xitlalic Osuna. Just in case you missed it, my business name is called Tarjetitas Con Amor. Um, I am from the city of Maywood. I was raised here, born in Bellflower, California, but I've lived in Maywood for the past 37 years with my family. We've been here for a really long time. I'm a first generation Mexican, I guess, yeah, Mexican here in the US. Yeah, my family has been here for 37 years and we're a family of business. We've had our own business for the past also 37 years. So everything that I do just is based off of my background, my family background. We're merchants, we're people that, since my dad's family started their own business, selling whatever they grow, we continued on with that tradition as well.
So we'll get to your family story a little bit later, but right now, tell us about your product, your merch, your medium, your art. What can people buy from you? What do you sell? What do you bring into this world?
What I sell is, and what I make is, they're greeting cards. They're non-traditional greeting cards because they're super blunt. They're super forward. One of my best sellers is which is I think, a very common term that we use within our communities. And that was my whole point of making these cards is, I was getting greeting cards from the store that were either too religious or too corny or very, very stereotypical of our community. So I decided to create something that in a sense, like, it was something that we knew we constantly said as a term of endearment. And it was just to kind of pull a little, like tug at the heart, and creating a memory for people. And it's something that we don't usually have out there. Like, you're starting to see it now on shirts, on trophy mugs, and I think I started around the same time that everybody started to create these things. So that's what my cards do. They tug at the heart, they create a memory, but also they kind of bring back they keep the culture alive. I feel like they keep our culture alive and it celebrates our culture as well.
Yeah, it's very like clowning on each other, comedy, but also de cariño, right? Like, you say
Yeah.
something like, I meant it de cariño. Like, it's like, yeah, it might sound like say, but I said it with love.
Yeah.
So tell me your story. Like, you have this history of merchandise and business in your family, and get more deep into that. We have like 7 minutes, so jump in there with, what you do for the Sela Arts Fest and how you organize and all that. That'd be a good little way to wrap it up.
I grew up in the swap meet vendor world. It's sort of like a subculture from everything else because we have our own traditions, we have our way of being. We kind of have a very traditional work schedule, right? We don't work the 9 to 5 schedule that a lot of folks work. And I feel like now people are understanding it because they're going into entrepreneurship during this pandemic, right? And they're finding ways to really keep bringing money in without working a 9 to 5 job. I my whole life wanted a 9 to 5 job because my whole life I worked at the swap meet, and I was like, what would it be like to have a 9 to 5
and have my weekends to myself?
Exactly. And then the pandemic happened, and then the quarantine happened. I was like, this is what y'all do on Sundays. I was like, oh, Sundays Sundays were meant for like the swap meet. And it was, I mean, it still was very family oriented, but we didn't do the traditional like Easter shit, or we didn't do like stuff that people do on Sundays. They barbecue, they do stuff, or they go out and celebrate for Mother's Day or Father's Day. We didn't do any of that. We did it on Monday, when it was less crowded, or we would do it after the swap meet. But I do come from that background, and I've appreciated. At first, I hated it, and I was like, no, I'm gonna go to school. I'm gonna get a degree, and I'm gonna get a really good job. And then I was like, damn, that's not. I didn't finish school because life happened. I didn't get my degree, and I have a job, but I still go to the swap meet. Like, it's kind of like you want to get away from it, but you can't. That's so embedded in me that I'm like, no, I know how to be my own boss. So I feel like my parents and my family showed that to me. They They taught me that I could be incredibly independent without having to, you know, and be my own person, you know, not having to work for anybody. But I also like working where I'm working because it's not your traditional workplace. Um, the company that I work for encourages us to be like multidimensional, like being like, you know, having all these things happening at the same time because they're like that as well. You know, they don't just have that one business; they also work and they have multiple businesses. So that's encouraging, you know, and they I use them as role models, right? But you know, my like I said, I feel like when I started my business, my card business, it just came naturally because I already knew how to work with the business, how to um, how to talk to people, how to sell product, and I just sell it, you know, but also talk about what I'm creating, and just be like, okay, I know how to do this. I don't have to like really sweat it as much as a lot of folks do because I already have this practice, right, that my family taught me how to
Yeah, you
do.
had a good foundation already of how to
Yeah,
be self-sufficient.
exactly. So sometimes I get frustrated when people are like, I don't know what to do. And I was like, well, go to the Swami. You know, there's a lot of spaces there.
It's like
You
come
know,
come hustle like the rest of us.
exactly. Wake up early in the morning, you know, and set up your stuff and be out in the sun. But, you know, there is some like misconceptions about folks that sell at the Swami. A lot of people think that we don't pay taxes, but we pay quarterly taxes. So unless you're selling like secondhand stuff, you don't, you know, you have to pay taxes, right? So that was one of the things that a lot of folks, you know, get hit with. They're like, oh, I want to come to the Swami. It looks like a lot of fun. And I'm like, well, you know, you have to do all of this. You have to register your business. You have to,
You got to be legit.
yeah, you got to be legit. Just because we're not in a brick and mortar doesn't mean that we're not a legit business. We are legit.
And so
But
how did that, sorry to interrupt, we
that's
only have
good.
a couple minutes and like I want to kind of touch on Sella Arts Fest because you're one of
Hmm.
the beautiful minds behind it. And so how did like your experience in all that, how does that translate into Sella Arts Fest? And like what are you, you know, how are you helping folks to become more legit? Or, you know, it's obviously not as strict as a swap meet, right? So how does that work out
Yeah.
like with the Sella Arts Fest and everything you do there?
I feel like this is an opportunity for folks who are just starting a business because, you know, there is a little more leniency for business owners. It's an opportunity for them to kind of like tap into that entrepreneurship or business, starting their own business. My goal, my long term goal, is to teach folks how to open up a business, either whether it's in a swap meet or in a pop up setting or in a brick and mortar, right? How to go about it. Um, but essentially, you know, what we do at the Stella Arts Festival is invite folks who have been wanting to start their own business to come and participate in this event. Obviously, this year it's a little bit different because it's going to be online. So we are inviting some of the old vendors that we had from the past 2 years that have been there, and then also who have participated at a Livio open mic in the city of Bell. We're giving those folks priority, right? And these are folks that are continuously doing pop ups, continuously out there, right? And are still working, are still doing stuff online, right? And how do you call it? One of the things that I want, like I said, one of my long term goals is to like help folks get resources to other markets, to other pop ups. And, you know, at the end of the day, if they want to form something where, you know, they could be an owner of a building where they could bring other people in, that's my long term goal, you know. One of the things that I learned from the Swami is, you know, nothing is yours, and it's not, you know, forever. It's not permanent. Things can happen. You know, one of the cases that we had in 2001 was the Swami that we worked in for 18 years was sold off, and then we were kicked out. So that was one of the things that I learned very young at 18, straight out of high school, how to become an activist or how to become an advocate for other vendors.
Well, this has been an awesome conversation. I
Yay.
feel like no one really knows how behind the scenes you are. I mean, well, people who know, right? But for the
Yeah.
most part, you know, you just sell the greeting cards. They don't know you run stuff, you know? So I think this
Yeah.
is really cool to put you in the front center, you know?
Thank
Thank you for your
you.
time.
Yes.
Thank you everybody for watching. We're gonna keep bringing you Sella Arts Fest vendors and organizers
Yay.
and promotions and tell you all the cool things we're doing in the region.